co-host, Mike McAuliffe, and
Thank you for joining us. Yes, Kurt is at Champs, which is an industry trade show that hits Vegas twice a year, and it's the custom handmade American products show, and they do everything from glass pipes and grinders to spice, which I just don't really think is a good thing.
I don't think they can do spice here at the trade show anymore, but
Have they
used
stopped
to.
that?
Well, here in Nevada, they legalized it. But for a long time, yeah, that was one of the that's where you would get your wholesale distribution of that stuff.
I am not in any way a prohibitionist. I'm very libertarian on this view, and as long as it doesn't affect other people, people should be able to put what they want in their bodies. But I've got to say, these prohibitionistas that have been out there fighting against the legalization of cannabis for all these years and other things. They've been, for the past several years, up in arms about spice and, oh, how bad it is and this and that. And fine, okay, and I agree with him on this. It is bad stuff. It can cause psychosis and other things. So use the natural alternative. Why?
I just don't like how they call it. They're like, oh, it's synthetic marijuana. It's synthetic marijuana. I don't like that label.
Mm-hmm.
I never really appreciated that label. It's just a chemical compound that they use to synthesize. What do they use it for? To kind of activate the receptors in your brain?
To the endocannabinoid receptors.
Things like that.
And the thing is, with pot, there's thousands of varieties, but it's still pot.
Right.
And that's how it is. But with this spice, with this synthetic cannabis, what you have happening is, since it is created in a lab, as you say, anytime the DEA gets something prohibited, and this specific formula or that specific formula, the chemists just go back in and tweak a molecule or two here and there, and now they've got something that's perfectly
that's
legal.
why they just did a broad-based ban over the whole thing here in Nevada and just kind of got rid of it. But mostly, I think I actually enjoyed the Champ Show. It kind of snuck up on me this year. I believe the American Glass Expo just wrapped up yesterday, so that they no longer overlap, which is, I suppose, convenient for the attendees, but not so convenient for the vendors who now have to extend their stay for a period of time.
Oh, they have to spend a few more dollars in Vegas. What
a few
shame.
more days. Yeah, just one of those things. But we're happy to have them. So
we absolutely are, and these shows, it shows an underlying dichotomy in how Las Vegas and Nevada react to this issue, because we know for years the police have been very, very gung-ho, hardline on anything to do with pot, and yet you have these shows coming into Las Vegas and bringing in a large amount of money to the coffers several times a year, and they're absolutely fine with that.
It's a lot of non-gaming revenue for sure. We're happy to have that ancillary revenue stream here in Nevada. Like, people don't even realize, they think, oh, they come to town and they have the trade show, but really, they're spending money on hotel rooms and restaurants and all that. I was up in Summerlin recently, up on in Boca Park, and I saw a Champs related van. I think it was like the Doob Tube guys or something like that were over there, and it just, it was at the Red Rock, that's right, and it just clicked with me, like, oh, here these guys are way away from the show, off the strip, giving some of these locals casinos a little bit of business, and it's just it's nice to see, and the show keeps getting bigger.
While his name is eluding me at the moment, I met the guy who founded the Doob Tube company back in '09 or so, and what a nice guy he is.
Yeah.
And he is just, just coming up with something that he can make that is ancillary, that has no legal jeopardy whatsoever, that services the market. And, I have met so many truly nice people who are on the fringes of this business and who are not getting back into, they have prior experience, but they're not getting back into it, whether for legal concerns or other, but there's a real camaraderie and a sense of fellowship in the people who are working in this industry overall, because they know they're fighting together for a common cause. And last week we had the Nevada Dispensary Association on the show, and they're forming a trade industry to work together. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to cut each other's throats to make a little profit now and then.
We'll see how we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, I suppose, after November.
And places are continuing to open up, and that's going to drive more patients into the program. I just saw a dispensary opened up within the past week or two, I guess, on Flamingo in Maryland. So they're really starting to populate throughout the valley, and that's a good thing. And ultimately, this is going to bring a lot of money into the state of Nevada, and not just in the medical side, but if we have legalization.
Well, and that's another thing. It's not just about the people coming to town spending their money for the trade shows. That's exactly what I was saying, is if some of these companies start incorporating here in Nevada, we're going to see all kinds of potential, like you said, ancillary industries pop up that aren't directly affiliated with the dispensaries or with the grow operations or things like that, that will provide additional tax revenue, additional jobs, and et cetera. It's really American capitalism at work. It's kind of nuts to see how large these trade shows have gotten. I remember it was just one aisle, and now it encompasses the entire top floor, the South Hall, the Las Vegas Convention Center, which is, that's a lot of space.
Yes.
And we'll see if it continues to grow. I certainly hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. It's bringing more revenue to the town, bringing more money into the local economy. Because
it legitimizes it too, I think, by having a real trade show and a real convention center, and kind of doing it, I don't want to say the right way, but the corporate way, I suppose.
To legitimize it, yes, it does in the views of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority and maybe some locals, but it's not the sort of thing that gains national attention.
No.
that you're having these shows. But what will gain national attention is the fact that votes to legalize recreational cannabis will be on the ballot in up to 7 states this year. And I say up to 7 because not all of the filing periods are done for gathering the signatures for these initiatives.
We're getting pretty close to it. We gotta. I mean, if you're going to organize a campaign and try to get out the vote and do a voter registration drive and all that kind of stuff, I mean, we only have a few months left.
Yes, absolutely. But for most of these states, it has already been done, and it's going to be on the ballot in I think 5 at this point, and there are still 2 that are undecided. Of course, the big player in this is California, which on its own consumes something like 20% of the nation's pot.
And home to 1 out of every 11 Americans.
Yes, absolutely, and that's why. But there was a very interesting article in the Las Vegas Sun on July 15th that was entitled. It was an editorial, actually, so it's not authored out. It's not to a single reporter's view, but it is the viewpoint of the Sun editorial staff, and it was entitled "How Much Would Legal Pot Do for Nevada's Economy?" And there are some very respectable numbers here. And if question 2 passes in November, Nevada voters will spark up a $7.5 billion economic activity level in the first 7 years of the program. And, while 7 years sounds like a long term, I can tell you, 7 years ago, this program was still being run by the Department of Agriculture, and they were trying to choke it off and keep it as small as possible. So,
and here we are now.
Yeah, and so 7 years can move pretty quickly. But some of these numbers are just mind-blowing. $1.7 billion would be the total wages and business owner income that would be generated in the first 7 years after legalization. I mean, and I would say the bulk of that is going to go to the owners, not the workers.
Right.
Like in any capitalistic system. But that's still a chunk of money. So you can see why these business owners and these various partnerships were spending so much money to get these licenses initially in the first round.
Well, I remember someone telling me, they're like, what's the big draw? Why cannabis? Why don't you go into something else? And I said, look, the first day I worked at a dispensary, I saw all this cash coming through the door, and it wasn't about that. The real overwhelming mindset for me was when one of our distributors came in and he said, there's nothing else that you can grow in your closet that sells for $3,000 a pound. And it just kind of made me scratch my head and think a little bit about how hard people work to do normal farming or do any kind of normal job. And
it's a lot easier than gold mining.
Yeah. Oh my God. No kidding. All the dry mining and things like that. It's just the profit potential is of course outrageous. It's salivating.
But
Almost.
a lot of that profit potential is because of the prohibition of pot. If it were not, you would see the prices fall, just as you have in Colorado and Washington, Oregon, where it is legal. You find that the number is coming down for the consumer, and that's ultimately a good
For sure. But then, like, the continuing evolution of the alcohol industry is kind of strange to me. Not strange, but interesting to me. How we had, when I was a little kid, most people drank the very basic beers like Budweiser and Heineken and things like that. And now within my lifetime, there has been this huge craft beer explosion that's seen thousands and thousands of breweries open up all over the country in response to their, I guess, rejection of what they think boring beer is. And of course, now there's a lot of independent wineries opening and things like that. So just when you thought, oh, well, alcohol's been around forever, there's nothing else they can do with it, here they come with more. And the cannabis industry is just getting a little taste of that. They've been able to do all these amazing things under the shadow of prohibition, develop all these incredible strains, do all these things without all of that public what's the word I'm looking for, that safety net of being in the public eye,
of being legal,
of not having to worry about getting arrested for developing their own
and it's
way to make a living.
interesting that you say that, because we have from three strains, which are sativa, indica, and ruderalis, to a much lesser extent, underground botanists have created thousands of strains of cannabis.
It's incredible.
I wonder what's going to happen in the next decade as we have legal cannabis throughout the country.
And so that's why when they say, oh, we're going to have $1.7 billion of economic activity, we don't really know how high this can go.
Owner income.
Yeah, we don't know how high this can go.
Because also, $464 million, almost $500 million, will be the total tax revenue that would be generated in those first 7 years. That's money that goes to the state. That's money that can build schools, that can build
That's
roads.
a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
But you have to take everything in perspective. It is a fair amount of money, but I recall arguing this with the legislature back in 2011, trying to move this bill forward when Paul Aisley, who was a friend of the show, had first introduced a bill to legalize cannabis in Nevada. They were like, well, we're facing a $4 billion shortfall, so, 30, 50, $100 million, that don't mean anything to us. Most people, it would make a difference to. And I think one of the other reasons people are getting into this is because what you see here with this new industry, which is a newly emerging industry legally, is one of those once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. If people had the smarts and the money to invest in Microsoft back then, or the tech industry, the internet industry before the bubble burst, that would be their boon. But not everybody could afford to do that.
I think this is potential. I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I still believe that recreational cannabis could be the most lucrative investment opportunity since alcohol came out of prohibition, or maybe in Nevada since gaming was regulated back in the 50s. I mean, this is it for my generation at least, or this is our opportunity to
as we
jump
look
forward.
at the American economy becoming more of a service economy, and people being worried about automation now, robots taking people's jobs.
Oh, that's serious.
Not just going offshore to lower markets, but robots, and it is serious. But what this industry would produce would be estimated 40,975, so almost 41,000, the total number of full-time jobs that would be added to the Nevada economy in the first 7 years after legalization, and that's not insignificant when you have people losing their jobs, manufacturing jobs due to outsourcing, and when in this same time period, I was reading in The Sunday, which is one of our alternative weeklies, that they expect over the next decade that waitressing jobs, bartending jobs are all going to go down as a result of automation.
Oh, it's even more than that. I read an article about 3-4 weeks ago that said that Foxconn, which is a company that's subcontracted by Apple to make the iPhones in China, has recently replaced 30,000 workers with robots, and they're experimenting with fully automating their line. Carl's Jr. Hardee's has recently come out and said that they are building a fully automated fast food restaurant with no staff. Domino's Pizza has introduced a pizza delivery robot in New Zealand that has a cooling compartment on one side for the drinks and a heating compartment for the pizza on the other side. It rolls up to your door and sends you a text message. You put in the code and the door's open for where your pizza is.
Wow.
All of these jobs, I mean, people kind of scoff at it and say, oh, it's way, way down the line. It's happening so fast.
And as a matter of fact, within the past couple of years, a California company introduced a product called MedBox, which was a medical cannabis automated dispensing machine. And
I was lucky enough to sit next to him at one of the NCIA dinners a couple years ago.
Really?
He was a nice guy, yeah.
You know, and it's a good idea. But I would say that as one who has a little red wine now and then or a little white wine, I never developed that connoisseur's palate for wine, and you know, there are a huge variety of choices, and I do believe that when you're talking about thousands of varieties of cannabis, that that people are not going to want to go up to a box with 100 choices and say, oh well, what am I going to pick now? That the idea that you will have knowledgeable retailers, bud tenders, dispensaries, whatever the retail locations are going to be called back then, who are going to be able to steer people in the right direction, those jobs are not quickly going to go to automation.
I heard another friend of the show, Michael Jameson, was talking to me about his bud tenders at Las Vegas Relief, and they called themselves scent sommeliers.
Ooh,
and
I like
thought
that.
Yeah, and that was the funnest name I had heard that's been tossed around for bud tenders or canna connoisseurs or whatever you want to call yourself, because the scent sommelier word implies that level of professionalism, that level of discretion, that you have the terminology and the verbiage to really go into the description that a real upper class consumer would want to hear. And you can upsell with that kind of knowledge and things like that. It's good for the business and it's good for the industry. And absolutely, it's good to see that there are real tax-paying jobs that are being created by this industry, and that they're going to be in potential to be good-paying full-time jobs.
Yes, yes, and it goes beyond just the cannabis industry itself, but the ancillary businesses that support it: security, construction, and financial. When the Senate and when the government gets its priorities in order. But the report figures that by 2024, 7 years after legalization, the number of jobs that would be supported per year by the regulation of the drugs, so that's the inspectors, the various bureaucrats that oversee this, would be 6,200. That's a fair chunk in itself. And you know, I know that as a Republican, you're probably not big on expanding.
I was just thinking, I'm
government.
like, 6,200 people seems like a lot, but when you really start adding it up, it doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility. So, I mean, it seems like a lot for Nevada.
Well, and that's going to generate over that period of time $1.1 billion for the annual cost of economic activity related to regulation. So just as a couple of years ago, when all these companies all these partnerships were throwing money at the state to get their applications, and the Department of Health and Behavioral Services realized a windfall of several $1 million, that's going to happen in a much bigger way over here. And finally, $224.2 million is the estimated amount that Clark County visitors would spend on marijuana, not in 7 years, in 2018.
Yeah, that's the
just
first year
in
after.
a single year after this is done.
That's all tied to a couple of factors. Do we get the Raiders? Where is the stadium? And most importantly, how much money is the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority willing to embrace this? Because they're really our biggest potential cheerleader in all this. They are the entity that brings all the people to town. They are that overwhelming, what happens in Vegas stays here campaign. That's all the LCVCA. So, LVCVA. And if they are willing to, I don't want to say educate people, but attempt to enlighten people on the fact that it's okay to come here and smoke cannabis, that would be a huge deal because it's going to be outrageously expensive for these independent businesses to attempt to get that word out. I mean, once it's recreationally legal, I guess the word will get itself out. But really,
pretty quickly.
I would love to see I don't know, I don't want to say an organized campaign, but I guess that is what I want, really, once it goes recreationally legal. I want them to embrace it just like they embrace advertising anything else.
And anything else. And with that, we're going to take a quick break and be right back.
Attention medical marijuana patients. Do you know what your cannabis actually contains? Are there heavy metals, pesticides, or even mold? And what strength is it really? And is it really what you need? Well, the answers to these questions are simple. DigiPath Labs. DigiPath Labs is a Nevada state-approved medical marijuana testing facility whose scientists carefully test products for safety and potency, all within the state's rigorous mandate. You can buy with confidence and trust knowing DigiPath Labs has tested your medicine. If you're a licensed grower, dispenser, extractor, or edibles manufacturer in Nevada and want unparalleled customer service and consumer confidence, go to digipathlabs.com and find out what we can do for you. And as a patient, only go to dispensaries that carry the DigiPath Labs seal of approval. That's digipathlabs.com, DIGIPATH labs.com. Or call us at 702-209-2429. That's 702-209-2429.
Welcome back to the Nevada Cannabis News Hour, and I'd like to go into a story next, which I've been following this issue for some time, and it's finally starting to gain some traction. And this comes from theinfluence.com by Shaleen Title, and the article is titled "How Insidious Laws Are Keeping Many from Participating in the Promising Legal Marijuana Industry."
Absolutely.
And we just talked in the last segment how this is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for people to get involved in this industry, because it's now coming into the sunlight. Now, it's an industry that is developing within a legal framework, and it's very different from illicit industries. And so for most people, this is that kind of once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But what's happening is that the industry is it's replacing two things that already existed. The illicit market, from which marginalized people have been able to make a living, and a system of prohibition that has ruined people's lives by arresting and incarcerating them for doing the very thing that people are now receiving licenses to do.
Yeah.
And that really gets to me, that these, people, especially in the medical area, who have been helping people for years and got persecuted for it, are being prohibited from getting involved in this industry.
There's an old saying, pioneers get slaughtered and settlers get the land. And these days the settlers are getting the land, and a lot of these settlers, I don't want to say didn't pay their dues, but I didn't see them when things were bad.
Well,
and here we are. And it's not just about that. This is about people who are a little bit more, I don't want to say like just
who are vocal, who are out there.
And let's just take it to the average guy who might have been arrested for possession or something like that, and is now prohibited from doing various things depending on the jurisdiction you may be in, depending on how strict that entity was, depending on which state you're in or which county you're in or whatever their clauses are, determining what was an excluded offense, what's not an excluded offense, why, what the term limits are for the time frames. It's a mess depending on where you are. Here in Nevada, we had to fight that battle during legislature, and that's still an issue.
When I first moved to Nevada, Nevada was still a 2 seeds or a felony state. And
don't gamble with marijuana.
Yeah, really. And just till recently, anything above an ounce was a felony possession. And so it's coming around now, but it is way too slow. And the article continues that felony exclusions are the provisions of state marijuana laws that prevent people with certain criminal backgrounds from entering the marijuana industry. And originally, the justification for these restrictions was that they provided an additional measure of security for an unprecedented type of business. And so this goes to that whole meme of regulating it like it's plutonium, not pot, and that they wanted to be so careful that the bad element didn't get involved in this, that they just decided to exclude the class of people who were most expert at the industry.
And not only that, but the people who have been bold enough to attempt to make a living off this and try to develop that, knowing damn well what the potential consequences were.
Well, yeah. Imagine that you're someone who had been growing or selling marijuana for years, long before it was legal to do so. In any other industry, demonstrated interest and experience would count in your favor when hunting a job, but not here. And due to well-documented and enforcement, if you come from an over-policed community, you're far more likely to have a drug conviction than someone from another community who's engaged in exactly the same behavior. Is it fair to block the person with a conviction but allow the person who was less likely to encounter police and perhaps more likely to afford a lawyer to enter this business? And that gets into a whole class warfare.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's kind of a tricky subject to dive into. That's where legislation has to come in. You have to have, the Lady Justice is supposed to be blind, right?
Supposed to be.
That's the whole reasoning behind that. So if you're, you can call it both ways if you want to, call it both ways, ref, if you want to have a sports analogy or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't exactly know how to balance that. You want to say, oh, we'll take it on an individual level, but that's kind of the whole problem with it, is you can't really take it on an individual level. If you're going to do it to one person, it has to be that way. So that's why we have to work to undo this damage, unfortunately, with all these various.
And it's going to take quite a bit of time to do that.
Well, even if Obama came out tomorrow and said it's recreationally legal, the war would not be over.
No.
It's not over until not only are all the people who are currently serving sentences for marijuana out of jail, but all of their records have to be expunged so that they can lead normal lives again. And not until then, and even then it's not over, because there will be firearms issues and this and that. There's always a battle to fight, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, when people with convictions are blocked from the legitimate industry, the regulated market causes them to lose income. And so what's happening in this country, you do the crime, you serve your time, you pay your debt to society, and then you're supposed to be able to move on and have a second chance. And these exclusion laws are preventing that.
Yeah, that's not how it goes, though. So often when you get out and you serve your time and you, quote, pay your debt to society, you've only begun to pay your debt to society because you have that, I guess, like that scarlet letter for the rest of your life.
Convictions are lifetime scarlet letters. I recall reading in the RJ a few weeks ago before the primary, and they were discussing candidates for this office or that office or whatever. And one of the guys, it said, ex-felon and whatever his business was. And so we have that ongoing persecution that somebody, did something wrong and now they're a bad person and they're irredeemable, and that is how that they are looked upon by society, while we are at a time where the average person commits 3 or 4 felonies a day on federal government regulations just by stuff they're doing. If they change the oil in their car and they pour it in the backyard or they pour it down the drain, oh my God, they're a felon. But it seems that in this area, it's where the focus is, because it's such an easy area to go after people.
It's always been easy to pick on cannabis patients and cannabis consumers, and this is just another example of that. I wanted to touch back on what you were saying about how prior experience helps in every other industry except this one. Mm-hmm. That is the sad truth. If you walk in and you say, look, I've been growing, up in California or whatever for all these years, they're going to say, prove it, or something to that effect. And I've heard a lot of stories about these growers who feel like they want to go legit, they want to come in and do it legit for a team, and then find out that they're like, oh well, we'll give you $35,000, $40,000 a year, and they're like, look, you don't seem to understand. I'm making
6 figures.
Yeah, I'm making well more, 2, 3, 4, 5 times that in some of these cases, and it's just not. It's worth the risk to keep doing it the way they're doing it, rather than seek the nominal reward of being a taxpayer now.
Yeah.
And it just is what it is. And I'm not pushing the blame onto the teams, because I understand there are a lot of expenses, but it's just going to come to a head at some point. Some of these. And
it's just kind of ridiculous that they're doing this. marijuana offenses are typically non-violent offenses. If there are guns around pot, it's because prohibition has made this substance as valuable as gold, and if you've got a lot of gold, you probably have some guns to
Right.
protect it as well.
Right.
And so, I know of a fellow who was up in Oregon with a company that's got multiple retail outlets, and he's involved. He's licensed from the state. They've just recently bought a piece of a dispensary down here, but he cannot get his card in Nevada to work at this place because he has a felony conviction for pot, and so he's legal in Oregon. Nevada says no, we're not going to let you in.
Unbelievable.
You're a bad person. If we
But
believe
it was for cannabis.
yeah. Yeah. If we believe that formerly incarcerated people should be given the chance to build a career and a life again, then this industry should be no different than any other. And I've been saying this for a long time, so WeCan has that, let's treat this like any other industry. This is not something where you're going out and killing and taking advantage of people and doing horrible things. Just normalize the industry. And
Just regulate them like anyone else. If they pass the business licensing and you catch them cheating, you shut them down. If they're not, then you just let them operate. I don't know what these people are afraid of. Do they think that these big bad felons are going to take away their business because they can operate that much better? If the free market dictates that they're good operators, they'll stay open. And if they're not, they won't.
And there's such a patchwork of laws. And I know, you've spent time in Alaska, and that, you look to go back there, and it's great. You don't have a felony conviction because the most egregious example in the country it goes beyond felonies. In Alaska, for example, you can't apply for a retail license if you've been found guilty of even a misdemeanor involving a controlled substance within the preceding 5 years. So even if you got busted for a joint and got a misdemeanor conviction, the state of Alaska will not let you have a retail license. It's insane.
They're very, very exclusionist up there, almost like the Hawaiians are, where they're very insulated in their society. They don't like outsiders. They don't want you up there, and this is a way for them to shun them. And like they also had a clause to where no non-Alaskans that weren't currently collecting the permanent fund dividend could apply. That means basically like 1.5 to 2 years of residency were required in order to do that. Now, of course, it's just really hamstringing a lot of these teams' abilities to raise money and get the recreational operations open to the capacity that they want to within the time frame that they want to.
And considering that everybody in the state legislature who voted it said that they were doing this for the patients, not for the tax revenue. They were doing this for the patients. These exclusion rules mean that the most qualified producers of this medicine for the patients are being barred from entry into this area. And you have to take either illicit growers who didn't care what they were spraying on the plants, or people who were maybe used to growing lettuce, and putting them in charge of this.
Trying to make the jump.
Yes. You mentioned Hawaii. States like Hawaii not only block people convicted of a felony drug offense from applying for a medical marijuana dispensary license, they also apply them from working at a dispensary in any capacity. Other states like New Hampshire block anyone with a felony from even serving as a caregiver for patients. So if people have paid for their debt to society, they should be able to move on. And if you're really concerned about patients, you should get them the most qualified help possible. And the most qualified help in this industry are people who were willing to risk their liberty and move forward to help sick people. So it just blows my mind that they're doing this. There are forgiveness periods in some of these states, but typically it's 10 years or so. But I can tell you that in 8 to 10 years from now, the people who were previously convicted will most likely have lost their experience. Things will have been superseded, newer technologies coming in and all, and they won't be competitive in the modern market.
They will have missed the boat, and by that time it's been 10 years, they will have moved on to something else most likely. It's just
it's a crazy situation. It needs to be fixed, and it needs to be fixed across the country. And this is something that WeCan's going to be
Yeah,
involved
but
in.
some of these states also have exclusions for marijuana offenses, also to kind of help.
Yes,
help with that.
yes. Some of them exclude marijuana from the felony prohibition on anyone who'd been convicted of a controlled substance. And in Nevada, certainly in the statute, it says that an excluded offense does not include something that would have been legal under the current laws. So it's possible for people who had state-level felony marijuana arrests.
Depending on who you were prosecuted by, I believe also there's some strange verbiage in there.
And depending on who you were distributing to, if you were just distributing out, to retail dealers, then you're not covered by this exemption. But if you can prove that you were working with medical patients, you are. And I think it's time for us to take another break, and we will be right back.
From the soothing sounds of a water wall to the warmth, wood interior, and beautiful artwork, as soon as you enter Sahara Wellness, you are welcomed into a relaxing space where we strive to provide our patients with a healthy balance of mind, body, and spirit. That balance is achieved through a compassionate and knowledgeable staff who possesses both a passion for the medical cannabis industry as well as unrivaled dedication to assisting those in need of a natural method of pain relief. Our bud tenders are available to assist patients in selecting cannabis-based medicine that best suits their needs from our selection of flower, waxes, CBD lotions, and delicious edibles. Sahara Wellness is located at 420 East Sahara Avenue, Las Vegas, Nevada. Check out our entire menu at www.420sahara.com.
All right. Back when I first smoked my first joint in the 70s at a Mardi Gras, that was pretty much the only way to do it. A joint or
That was
a
the
pipe.
first way I smoked.
That was how it was. And now we have all sorts of different things. By Philip Smith from alternate.com. We've got a story that vape pens and edibles are trendy ways to consume pot, but good old roll-up joints are still number one. And they talk about the various marijuana industry companies are getting as much data as they possibly can from point-of-sale retailers to see where the industry is moving on this. And according to one of these companies, Headset, according to their data, total marijuana sales grew from just under $40 million in April to just over $50 million in May. Tell me, what else on this planet could you get into a business and see 20% growth in a single month? I mean, that's actually, 25% growth,
Right.
adding 10 to 40. It's just incredible. And so with this money coming into it, the retailers, the owners are trying to figure out how to maximize
Of course,
their
who
potential.
isn't?
And by product category, bud sales grew the smallest amount percentage-wise, at about 5%, while the sale of vapes were up, vape pens were up by 30%. Tinctures and creams were up more than 50%, and topicals were up by 70%. And
That's interesting.
it is, but understanding, though, that they started from such low points.
Right.
That it's like Royal Crown Cola or Mr. Pibb or something like that having a big increase. They're still not going to catch up to Coke and Pepsi,
Right.
On that sort of
Just
stuff.
because the numbers look good doesn't mean the volume is anywhere near equal.
But 70% topicals, I think that points to a whole new market demographic, because I've been at various meetings around the valley with some senior groups to try and enlighten them on this, and I'm amazed at how many people who are in their 70s or even their 80s are saying, "Oh yes, I'm using medical marijuana now. I get an ointment and I rub it on my knee." And these are people who've never smoked a joint in their life and don't want to start now, but the topicals, which will not get anyone high, still offer the anti-inflammatory and pain relief.
Yeah, I was kind of leery of those. I saw these CBD creams coming out, and I'm like, yeah, do they really work? And my neighbor is like a Vietnam vet, and he's got bad shoulder, bad knee, bad back, bad everything. And he was telling me, he's like, man, my knees are killing me and this and that. So I gave him some CBD cream, and I'm just like, give this a shot. So he put it on his knees, and he's like, it didn't work. So he put it on his shoulder, and he was sitting there watching television, and he reached for the remote, and he realized that it didn't hurt, and he's like, wait a minute, and just kind of gave it one of these and just started going with it, and started realizing how he just didn't, it was just subconscious. It's not like a big burning sensation or anything. It just works for him. And it's just strange, some people don't respond to it, but damn, those people swear by it who do. I mean, they, Scout's honor, it works for them. So.
I've got to say that I was skeptical as well, not only of the CBD topicals, but the THC-based topicals, and saying, it just doesn't really sound like it's going to work. But as you know, as some of our listeners know, I had open heart surgery less than 3 months ago, and boy, that was a surprise. But anyway, you're not supposed to put anything on the incision till it heals up. Okay, fine. That takes a week or so. And after that, though, you've got incredible pain in this chest area where they cut you and cracked you open, because it's just skin and the bone. You don't really have muscle there in the middle of your chest, and it hurt like hell. And so I was given some CBD cream to try, and I figured, boy, this hurts, and what's my choice? Popping down more opioids to the point where it kills the pain, but it also has all sorts of unwanted side effects. Let me try a little of this. And I put this CBD cream on, and I gotta say, within 10 to 15 minutes, that pain was gone. I was astounded, and obviously I've been a long time proponent of the use of medical cannabis. I was absolutely astounded by the level of pain relief that I got from that, and just as a
without intoxication.
None whatsoever. I could have pissed in a cup and done a UA, and it would not have shown anything, because it does not enter the bloodstream this way.
It's like you said, you've been telling me for a long time, if cannabis was discovered a few years ago, it would be this magic plant.
If cannabis did not have a euphoric effect, if it didn't get people high, it would be a miracle
drug, yeah.
And for some of the people
So
that I've
strange.
dealt with who have terminal cancer or other very advanced diseases, and at the end of their life, what's wrong with a little euphoria? What's wrong with letting them feel okay? And as when I had this heart surgery, and I came out of it, I'm in the hospital, I have an on-demand morphine drip. Pump that thing. You can't pump it more than once every 8 minutes, but you can keep going.
Every 8 minutes.
Yeah. And you can get your dose within two or three clicks, and that's fine. And I would be there, and my wife would come to visit, and she'd say, you just doze off. And that's the thing. People who have these terminal diseases, cancers, which are horribly painful, they're clicking that pen as quick as they can, and they're getting these doses, and they're either falling asleep because of it, or they're just out of it. Whereas with cannabis, you might be a little high. You might get a little off track, but you're able to interact with your family, and
If there's a fire in the building, you're going to make it out. If you're on morphine, I don't know what your chances are, depending on the dosage, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that marijuana industry in general is now operating in an increasingly legal environment means that entrepreneurs are more willing to experiment with innovative products and have channels to bring them to market.
Oh, well, that's the Champ Show all day long.
Yeah, really. And even 10 years ago, walking into dispensaries in California, you didn't see all these topicals. You didn't see all these oils.
No, things were basic back in the day. You had flowers, your pre-rolled joints, your basic brick hash, your keef, and things like that, and your homemade edibles, basically. And now, I mean, hell, even in 2010, there was a lot of homemade stuff going around. And now the packaging is very professional. It's very well put together. The brand names are really strong now. The reputations across state lines for some of these brand names are really strong. Oh yeah, the laboratory testing is real good. And the legitimacy of the industry just through the packaging and the retail side of it has grown leaps and bounds, not to mention the vast number of products. Hell, you have
And that's some of that
refrigerators full of products.
Ancillary business that we're talking about.
I mean,
making the blister packs.
Oh yeah, I couldn't.
Doing the printing.
I can't think of all of the products that I've seen that have been pushed to these dispensaries in the past few months. Gums and trochees and just gummies and like anything you can think of that they can try to put cannabis in that they think will appeal to a market, they'll do it. They have vegan coconut THC capsules for vegans who don't want to have animal-based products, and they have dark chocolate CBD infused, like everything you can think of, man. It's there. Powder for putting in your hot drinks
It
that has
doesn't
THC
surprise
in
me
it.
because mankind has been using cannabis in some form or another since mankind evolved into mankind.
Since prehistory.
Since prehistory. And with that little enlightenment, we're going to take another break, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Armin Yamanijan, CEO of Essence Dispensaries, and I'd like to let you know a little bit about our company. As a completely complimentary service, our on-site nurse is here to meet with any patient or non-patient to discuss dosing and best practices. We have 3 convenient locations. We have one location on Tropicana between Decatur and Jones, which is our west side location. Our Henderson location is on the corner of Sunset and Green Valley Parkway, and we're proud to announce that we have the first and only dispensary on the Las Vegas Strip, on the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Sahara. Our prices are the lowest prices in town and the highest quality medicine. Please come and see us at one of our 3 convenient locations or visit us at essencevegas.com. You can also call us at 702-978-7575. Once again, the number is 702-978-7575.
All right, we're back again with the Nevada Cannabis News Hour, and coming into our next segment, we want to talk about an article from the Huffington Post that said "War on Weeds End in Sight," and it says that the end of the federal government's war on weed is approaching fast. Yay!
Was that titled 1969?
Right? Yeah. No, that would have been 1976, just before Hamilton Jordan went to the normal Christmas party, and that's a whole nother story. But no matter how the details work out, it seems pretty much clear at this point that the federal government is going to end this war on cannabis, and it's about time, and we can look at various ways that that's going to happen. First off is that the DEA is about to report what they're going to do. They've been talking about rescheduling cannabis, and they said they were going to have it done by the end of June, and of course they're delaying because their budget, so much of their budget is about pot. And so any day now, though, we should be hearing what their decision is, the completion of their review on the status of cannabis regarding federal law. And I understand they're dragging their feet, but we'll see what happens. When they do so, they will likely recommend a downgrade from Schedule 1 to at least Schedule 2. Now, Schedule 2 is where cocaine is and where Vicodin is, and the Percodans,
a lot of really heavy stuff. Yeah.
Really heavy stuff. And Schedule 2 will not allow for that much more research than is being done now, which is almost none. Although strong cases could be made to regulate it down to Schedule 3 to Schedule 5, and so that would be much less restrictive. And Schedule 5s might be things like sleeping aids or higher dose allergy medications or that sort of stuff. That wouldn't be too bad.
I didn't realize those things were scheduled.
That's
interesting.
Okay,
because it's an over-the-counter medicine. So aspirin is also scheduled somewhere within the drug cornucopia.
You can go to any store and you can buy 200 milligram tablets of acetaminophen or ibuprofen, Tylenol or Advil, trade names, and you can buy that retail. However, if you go to the doctor and you get a prescription for 800 milligram pills, it's the same medication. You're just taking 4 times as much, and sometimes you're in need of that. But the idea that you can buy this stuff in the store, and yet to get a higher dose, rather than having to just take a couple of extra pills, you have to go to the doctor and get a prescription, get a prescription filled.
I have always wondered about that. Why do I have to go to the doctor to get ibuprofen 800s? But it just is what it is, I suppose.
Because
because of
you're too
scheduling.
stoned to count to 4?
I don't know.
Alcohol fall within there.
Yeah, totally unregulated, right? So we're going to see what happens. But even if they dig their heels in, they refuse to recommend any changes, they might spark a backlash from other parts of the government because I think that even though politicians are not leading on this issue and they're far behind the people, they realize that there are enough of us out there with torches and pitchforks that they've got to do something. So how could this happen? Well, President Obama could act on his own and through an executive order by a stroke of his pen, or really, in this case, it's the Attorney General, who's Loretta Lynch, could reschedule it because the DEA is under the auspices of the Department of Justice, which is headed up by the Attorney General. And so the Attorney General could decide to move forward on this. Now, we know that the President has had a very mixed record on this issue. He's belittled it, he's made fun of it.
I was going to say, I wouldn't count on it. Like, that's a nice pipe dream. Like, he could use his executive authority to kind of help us out here. Will he?
What about his friends, the Choom gang that he was a member of when he was in high school, right? How come it's okay for Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and Barack Obama to have all smoked pot in their youth and credible
Kasich
reports, or that Laura Bush was a dime bag dealer in college? How come these people get away with this stuff, and yet somehow the rest of us can't be trusted to have that kind of responsible use? And what they had was responsible use because obviously they moved forward onto very successful careers in their lives.
No doubt.
Are they somehow smarter or better or more responsible than the rest of us? No, I don't buy into that elitist view. So he could act on this, but because it is the DEA's decision here, it really falls under the Attorney General, and so they could do that. Congress also doesn't even need to be involved in this policy in order to do this, but they could schedule it. And there is recent movement on the medical side from not only ardent supporters of the end of prohibition like Earl Blumenauer, but from some of the most stringent opponents and prohibitionists to at least allow medical research to move forward on this. And so it's going to happen. It's going to happen soon. The Democratic Party, as I reported last week, has put a plank in their new platform of this year to get a path towards legalization and to do more study. And this was a result of Bernie Sanders saying, hey, it's got to be descheduled. We've got to treat it like alcohol and tobacco. And that approach has worked in a number of states like Colorado, Washington, Oregon. Obviously, Alaska had decriminalized back in the 70s.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen, and it's going to happen soon.
Oh.
So
meanwhile, on the Republican side,
there's one other point that I want to
not only did they strike the medical marijuana portion of their platform out of their I don't even want to get into that.
Out of the party platform.
Yeah, but Trump picked Mike Pence from Indiana as his vice president. Surprisingly, I didn't, as a cannabis enthusiast, consumer, patient advocate, I don't really like that pick any more than I do Christie. He hasn't been as publicly vocal about how he hates us, but he hasn't been our friend either.
When he was in Congress, he was.
Yeah, well, now that he's been the governor, he's done his best to suppress the Indiana voter initiatives and things like
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. Possession of over
he successfully
30 grams is still punishable by up to
felony.
2.5 years in prison.
Mike Pence is fine with that. In fact, 3 years ago, he successfully blocked a move in the legislature to reduce some of those penalties, saying that while he wanted to cut prison populations, he didn't want to cut penalties to achieve that end. I think we need to focus on reducing crime, not reducing penalties, he said. I think this legislation, as it moves forward, should seek to continue to send a strong message to the people of Indiana, in particular to those who would come into our state to deal drugs. We are going to be tough and stay tough on narcotics in this state. AKA, I hate the dope. I
Yeah.
hate the dopers.
Let's build more prisons. Let's not build schools. Let's build the
it's
prisons.
just one of those. It's
So-
just, Pence has been handsomely compensated by tobacco companies for his advocacy against anti-smoking public health campaigns, even though they have even though they have proven wildly successful in driving down smoking rates. Mike Pence is a man who rejects proven public health interventions for one dangerous substance while insisting on failed punitive prohibitionist policies for another less dangerous substance.
Yeah, Mike Pence said in 2000 that that smoking cigarettes does not cause lung cancer.
Look,
The Surgeon General of the United States in 1964 determined that it did. Crazy. Last thought on that?
Last thought on that is I just hope if they do make it to the White House that it's starting to look worse and worse. If Christie becomes the Attorney General and Pence is the VP, it's going to be a tough sell, especially with the Republican Congress if they get in to get anything done on a federal level for a long time.
Oh, boy.
So I'm really keeping my fingers crossed that someone comes to see the light on
Well,
this in the not too distant future.
like Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said a couple of weeks ago, if Trump gets elected president, it may be time to move to New Zealand. So, without trying to be too political on that point, I want to thank you for listening to another session of the Nevada Cannabis News Hour. We will be back next week. There is no slow time right now in cannabis news. We always have more than we can cover because it's happening, and I hope you feel the change and be involved in the change. It's really important. Thanks so much for listening.
Register to vote.